The following video is rated M for mature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Let's talk spooky. Well, summer is fading away until next year, where we'll sit around in obscene humidity and sweat until our genitals scream at us in foreign languages. And as sure as Facebook is about as relevant as a steam-powered sundial, autumn and winter are upon us. Or you could be like me, where I am, sadly realize that spring and autumn don't actually exist anymore. Summer and winter are 6 months long each, and temperatures in both seasons are reaching new extremes. What global warming? Fuck. Well, actual autumn weather or not, it's that time of year again. The leaves are changing color, there's a pleasant chill in the air no matter how brief, and a change of season such as this can only mean 3 things. Eating enough food to suffocate a goddamn Snorlax at a minimum of 3 different times, bumping into Santa's fat jolly ass as he stands outside of a Menards half-heartedly ringing a broken bell, at least triple that, and a time where all things odd come out to play. A time where the creepy and the crawly are in their prime. That one time of year where things get spooky. It's Halloween! The greatest month of the year! I look like a fucking idiot and I don't care. This time of year, we are bombarded with all sorts of media that falls under various degrees of scary or Halloweeny. Everything from shirts to hats to sweatpants, oven mitts, thongs, decorations, the usual fare for costumes at Walmart, TV commercials, shitty quick dollar cash-in movies, and, of course, video games. Therein lies the rub, though. When it comes to Halloween-themed things like clothing and costumes, pancakes, and all that other crap, it'll usually get relegated to just this time of year. But when it comes to the latter, video games and movies, we get that shit year-round. Why is that? That's not a rhetorical question. I actually have no idea. In a single year, there can be an absolute avalanche of horror movies. As an example, in 2012, we got Sinister, The Woman in Black, VHS, Paranormal Activity 4, House at the End of the Street, The Devil Inside, Abraham Lincoln, The fucking Vampire Hunter, and Cabin in the Woods 2! That same year, we even saw some video game horror movies, like Resident Evil, Reticulating Splines, and Silent Hill Revelation. Sorry. While not nearly as overflowing with options, video games can sometimes suffer from a similar issue. For some, it can end up being daunting to try and find one to play, especially when you're new to the genre. Because let's be realistic here, not everyone grew up with a PlayStation 1 and a copy of Resident Evil in the house. Sure, we can go to friends and ask for suggestions, or go on YouTube and listen to people yell about things. By the way, thanks for watching, you're super cool, don't ever change, you're amazing, I love you, please don't leave me, I'm so alone. But even if you do that, there would be an absolute deluge of suggestions. People going off on one saying, "Bruh, you gotta play this." "Nah, you gotta play this, otherwise you're not a true fan of scary games." "I played Five Nights at Freddy's at 2 in the afternoon with the shades open and I only shit my pants twice, it's tremendous, it's so spooky." And that is the topic of today's video. You see, there are a lot of options when it comes to scary games. The problem with that is that, well, for all intents and purposes, being frightened in any way is completely subjective. What scares the person sitting on this side of you is not going to scare the person sitting on this side, and vice versa. And fears and phobias can be really, really selective too. A prime example? Me. I am petrified of heights. I can't climb ladders, I can't stand on high platforms, I can't even go to concerts and plays and sit in the balcony, because that just gives me the jeebies. But if you put me on an airplane, even in the most turbulent of skies, I am cozy as can be. Fly me to the moon, Captain. That being said, today's video is going to be 5 of my personal favorite horror-ish games. See, I only put the ish there because I have a feeling some of the video games I mentioned today, they're not going to fall perfectly into the cookie-cutter horror genre that a lot of purists like to stick to. And purists are pretty boring. And this isn't a be-all, end-all, best video game of all time kind of list. I don't really get into best of all time anything. I mean, it's kind of impossible. All time isn't even over yet. No, these are just some of my personal favorites and some suggestions for you. whether you're a seasoned veteran or a complete fledgling when it comes to horror games. For this video, I'm going to promise two things. Firstly, seeing as these tend to bank on a thriller style, they are an experience. And to get the full effect, you're just going to have to play them for yourself. So this video is going to be 100% spoiler-free. And secondly, there are a lot of games out there that tend to rely on jump scares and use them as a substitute for actual design. The exceptions are pretty few and far between. I promise that this video will not contain any jump scares whatsoever. I swear on my life. Well, specifically my copy of Monty Python's The Meaning of Life. It's worth a little bit more. Also, this is just a list of my personal favorites. If one of your personal favorites doesn't pop up on this list, don't take it personally. For the love of God, don't cry about it. I can't hear you anyway. Let's begin. Okay, let's start with an easy one. At number 5, it's Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, 3, and some parts of 4. Anything after that can... What? Hey, no, you just stop. Nope, shut the f*** up and hear me out! So, Scott Cawthon has technically closed this franchise up for good. To be honest though, I'm not exactly holding my breath. All due respect to him, that is fine by me. My own opinions aside, these games were everywhere for a while. They've had a boatload of weird-ass sequels and spin-offs, and as much as I adore MatPat at the Game Theorist channel, the lore of this oddly innocuous series based entirely on a haunted, bootleg Chuck E. Cheese is what certified engineers and scientists would refer to as, well, a clusterfuck.
Full of peanuts and fuck.
That being said, it's not without some merits. While thinking back to what I said a few moments ago about jump scares, I kinda have to give Five Nights at Freddy's a sort of get-out-of-jail-free card. Why? It was the first of its kind. At the time, it was a new and novel concept. It wasn't some kind of quick cash-in on Steam Greenlight. No, it was a series of short, sweet, reasonably constructed games. And as they evolved over time, specifically these 4, with ramping difficulties, custom nights, and such, their longevity was entirely up to the player. And some of you are watching this and thinking, hey, wait, you said you didn't like jump scares. That's the thing. I don't. Not at all. I think jump scares, for the majority, are cheap, and they're used as a replacement for actual design and carefully constructed atmosphere. But Five Nights at Freddy's was constructed around them. In short, they're the whole point, and they fully, happily embrace just how silly they are. Let me put it this way. Let's say you go to a movie theater to see whatever the hell you want. Something scary, something funny, something that you personally despise, but it was your date that picked it out, so you're kind of obliged to see it and like it. You've got your tickets, and you make your way to the concession stand. Now, do you show up at the concession stand in a 3-piece suit, smoking a pipe, and order a chef salad, a filet mignon, and a bottle of white burgundy Montrachet on ice? Fuck no! You get popcorn, Twizzlers, and a Coke the size of a small 4-door Volkswagen. Granted, it costs about the same, but that's beside the goddamn point! Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's is a great example of what I like to call self-imposed dramatic irony. You know when you're watching a movie or a TV show and you see somebody walking around their own house at 3 in the morning, then you see that same somebody has somebody else with a knife sneaking up on them, and you're watching it unfold going, oh shit, oh fuck, oh shit, dude, he's right behind you, oh god, oh man, oh god, oh man, oh fuck. You tell them to turn around knowing full well that they can't fucking hear you. What you say is not going to change the events playing out on screen. That is dramatic irony. It's where the audience knows something that the performers do not. Five Nights at Freddy's does this too, but on a much more personal and fourth wall breaking kind of level. Yes, you know there's a giant mechanical bunny loping around the halls. And yes, you just know it's gonna jump out and eat someone's fucking face any second now. You just know something is going to happen. And it's going to happen to that dude on screen. But there is no dude on the screen. That's just your reflection in the monitor, Chucklenuts. This is all happening directly to you. Yes, these games are packed to the eyebrows with jump scares, as well as the rest of the franchise. But 1, 2, 3, and parts of 4, I believe, do them the best. The game mechanics as a whole and the feelings that they evoke are carefully built around those scares. They're like, well, popcorn. There's a lot of it to go around, it's cheap, enjoyable, and yes, it does get stale after a few hours, but more often than not, people just come back for more. And it's easy to enjoy in a somewhat mindless fashion. While I'm not personally a fan of jump scares, these games do them in a fun and tension-building sort of way that's great for a weekend with friends. Yeah, it's a simple concept, but often simple designs are the best. Give these games a shot, even if only once. Alright, picture something with me. Imagine a first-person video game. A survival horror game where you play as a woman. A blind woman. This is Perception. A successful Kickstarter project created by The Deep End Games and published by Feardemic, Perception is the story of Cassie, a blind woman who has been plagued by strangely vivid nightmares of a mansion in New England. In an attempt to put whatever is bothering her to rest, she seeks out the mansion, and what she finds inside is not what she bargained for. On concept alone, I knew I had to give this game at least a try. Gameplay is pretty straightforward for the most part. First-person exploration, puzzles, audio logs, some supernatural elements, creepy fucking dolls, slowly piecing together a story that she has a far larger part in than she realizes. But Cassie's blind, though. How does this work? Sound. Every sound that is made in the context of this game shows the surroundings via echolocation, or at the very least, a very nice dramatization of what that would look like. Certain sounds are associated with certain colors, casting shapes and surfaces into sharp blue and green reliefs. Everything from dripping faucets, ticking clocks, to the tapping of Cassie's cane, a primary game mechanic, and footsteps, whether they're hers or something else's. This game offers an interesting example of risk and reward. Tapping her cane is an integral part of the progression, but tapping it too much at the wrong time summons a presence. It gives us pause to ponder whether we can navigate with ambient sound alone, or if we gamble on tapping around a bit. This game has a remarkably striking art style, as you can probably already see, and the conscious effort put into making every sound attention-grabbing is wonderful. Perception is a great example of how the imagination can become your worst enemy, though. We're playing a game that is cloaked almost entirely in darkness. Every sound casts nearby surfaces into ghostly contours of color, and then they fade. Quickly. We're not helpless, but we are at a disadvantage, and we're being followed. It's easy to play this game and put yourself on edge, walking around thinking, where the fuck am I? What's with the dolls? What the fuck is Chick? What is that voice, and why is it repeating everything I just said? I do have to be honest, though. There's a reason this game is where it is on this list. It's not perfect, not in the slightest, but it is at least worth a shot if you're looking for a twist on something you might already know. I mean, sure, it does take a little bit to get going, but even so, it is really refreshing to see something as simple as this get turned completely on its head by one simple mechanic: being a blind human being in a survival horror game. That just boggles the mind. And the creators, the Deep End Games, they actually have team members that have worked on the likes of Dead Space, BioShock, and BioShock Infinite. Sure, they could have just as easily rested on their laurels and done the same stuff as before, but I have to commend them for branching out and creating something truly unique and interesting. I really do look forward to what comes next from these guys. At number 3, we have Faith. This is possibly the only game on this list that follows a by-the-book horror story. Sort of. In this game, we take control of what we can safely assume is a priest of some variety, as given away by his stylish collar and his bound button command that summons Jesus Power! He shows up at the site of a failed exorcism, and we presume he has returned to finish the job. Good, easy, right to the point, let's do this! We guide this guy, John Ward, through a forest, searching, waiting for something to happen. And when it does, we can use the power of Christ to handle it. Eventually, we find a house, we enter, explore a little, expand on the story, get the shit scared out of us, and straight onto the carpet, the usual. This game is very simple to grasp. not only in its story, but its design, its style, and aesthetic. In lieu of cutting-edge graphics and sound design, the developers, Airdorf Games, elected to go with a very specific look and feel, rooting everything in the game in the style of MS-DOS or Atari games. Everything from the visuals and controls to the music, sound effects, and voice acting, as well as one other thing. These cutscenes, what? Sure, the game is a textbook example of minimalism, but that is a massive check in its favor. When you have a minimalist look such as this, where it's primarily simple stick figures, outlines, twisted things you can't really even describe, and a significant lack of intense detail unless it's something that's important to the progression of the game, what tends to happen, whether you want it to or not, is one of my favorite things when it comes to thrillers. Our minds fill in the gaps. What was it I just said about perception? About how our imagination can sometimes be an enemy to us. It takes the sights, the shapes, and the sounds that are provided to us, and it fills in the gaps with what it thinks belongs. Sometimes it'll create something familiar. Sometimes something completely alien that startles us. But sometimes it doesn't really know how to handle a certain situation. Have you ever looked at an inanimate object and seen a face, an expression? Well, this is a textbook example of what's known as apophenia, where the mind finds patterns, context, and meaning where none exists. This game, for example, it gives us a blue stick figure with a black and white neck, a mush of yellow pixels, and an even bigger mush of red pixels. But in the context provided, it shows us a priest, his cross, and a trail of blood leading to a destination. Mind is a pretty crazy thing, isn't it? Getting back on topic, Faith is a pretty short game. My first playthrough was around the 20-minute mark, but that won't affect any good times to be had in this. And did I mention there's multiple endings? Because there's multiple endings. Each one is more of a mindfuck than the last. It's short, it's simple, it's well made, there's a decent amount of replay value, and it's also free! I can think of far worse ways to spend half an hour. You know, cell phones are pretty amazing, aren't they? I mean, sure, you can just call or text people, but you can do so much more. You can check and send emails, you can take pictures, you can take video, you can make notes to yourself, draw little doodles, send dick pics to your best friends, keep in touch with people across continents and oceans, play video games, and even fill yourself with a never-ending, ever-looming sense of existential dread while being ever watched, always watched by a technologically bound 21st century eldritch abomination. Isn't that lovely? At number 2, we have Simulacra. Simulacra was developed and published by Kaigen Games. Kigurumi? Fuck. Simulacra is a found phone game, much in the same vein as found footage movies like The Blair Witch Project or Cloverfield. Sorry. It's essentially the same concept. We, the player, have found a cell phone. We look through the phone in an attempt to find out where its owner, a woman named Anna, is. And in the process, we find the only piece of media that works on it, a video of Anna.
If you look into my eyes, you can see it looking back. Can you see it? I just wanted to be happy. My name is Anna, I don't want to take anyone else! My name is Anna. It's too late for me. My name is Anna. I'm saying this. Don't come find me. Don't.
It's unsettling, kind of disturbing, and it sets the tone of this little adventure really well. As we search through her messages, contacts, and social media, trying to suss out what's happened, we talk to her friends, her coworkers, her ex-boyfriend, trying to piece together what might have happened to her, and time is running out. However, we slowly discover that her phone is hiding far more than we can yet guess. The phone, over the course of the game, is in a painfully slow recovery mode, decrypting lost photos, videos, and text conversations. Throughout gameplay, we examine her social media, dating apps, messages from her boss, and in an attempt to cover our own asses, we are forced to pretend to be her in some cases. Sometimes this ends well, sometimes it doesn't. I gotta say, this game at many a time made me feel so genuinely uncomfortable. You're intent on at least trying to save a human life, but at what cost? Invasions of privacy, meddling in the personal lives of so many people, dicking with people's emotions and mental states, avoiding police involvement. There are moments in this game where the characters just straight call you. They dial you up and call you. Sure, you can't actually respond to them, but it still scares the shit out of me. Now, there are a number of jump scares in this game, but Simulacra is a prime example of executing them properly. It's a basic concept, banking on tension and release, letting the mind do all the work again, winding you up to the point where something as simple as a phone ringing will send you out the door, down the street, around the corner with much wetter pants. Now, the amount of jump scares in this game I can count without taking my shoes off. The mechanics in the interface are so simple, so intuitive, and it's possibly one of the most immersive games I've ever played. Why do I say that? Well, here's the thing. When you play the game, it's as though you're just scrolling through your own smartphone, which is genius in and of itself. Because not only is the game available to play on Steam, it's also available on smartphones. Yes, a game about a found phone being available to play on a phone. It seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, I know that, but I'm within my rights to be a little skeptical. So when something like this comes around and ends up being really good, I am over the damned moon. And no, it's not the first of its kind, but Kaigen games are pretty fucking good at what they do, if I may say so. I am far too much of a chicken, as you can tell. So I played the PC version, but something tells me it didn't detract from the experience at all. This game is absolutely bursting with Easter eggs and discoverables. Things that are strange, fun references, things that expand on the world that this game lives in, things that are still making people's heads spin long after this game came out. Garbled messages in Morse code, messages that seem like absolute nonsense, keys to more multiple endings. Also, on kind of a serious and kind of a personal note as well, there's no jokes here, no jokes, no script, as you can probably tell. There was something that happened the first time I played through Simulacra. It's not exactly a spoiler, because it's just extra stuff. Set dressing, something that adds depth to the world. It also adds a significant amount of really realistic gravity to a game that's otherwise almost entirely supernatural. Scrolling through Anna's phone, I saw her recent call log. And I saw a number. It caught my eye. And me being the curious potato that I am, I got this wild hair and I decided, call it. A lot of people like to overuse the phrase, got real, but after I made this call, shit got kind of real. I mean, it on its own, it's not going to seem like much, but if you do this in the context of playing the game, just listen.
You have reached the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, also servicing the Veterans Crisis Line. If you are in emotional distress or suicidal crisis, or are concerned about someone who might be, we're here to help. Please remain on the line while we route your call to the nearest crisis center in our network.
I'm not gonna lie, kind of messed me up. Simulacra is a trip and a half. It's engaging, no matter what way you play it, and it will have you on the edge of your seat from start to one of its multiple finishes. It takes the novelty of mobile gaming and raises it to the next level. It's also one of the longer games on this list. It was certainly a contender for the #1 spot, but just happened to get beat out. And I can only think of one game that could possibly be better. But before that, before we show off #1, I have some honorable mentions I want to add to the pile. The Outlast games, all of them, including DLC, especially for all you lovers of torture porn out there. There's Soma, which is kind of a mess, but it's a good existential kind of sci-fi mess. Alien Isolation. F***ing duh. The Resident Evil franchise. Just the good ones. Just the good ones. Her Story. An FMV mystery kind of game, with one hell of a twist at the end. Give it a shot. Layers of Fear. It's a little campy, but it's a good romp. Observer. Actually made by the same guys who made Layers of Fear. Imagine L.A. Noire by way of Blade Runner, but the entire movie of Inception is a mechanic. Oh boy. Silent Hill 1, 2, and 3. No excuses? Play them! But stay away from the HD ports. Those were hot garbage. And finally, The Legend of Zelda, Majora's Mask. I love this game. I mean, look, here's my copy right here. It's signed by Gerard Khalil, the Completionist, and Peanut Butter Gamer. What? Oh, shut the fuck up. It's bleak, it's atmospheric, it's well designed. I warned you about the ish! Oh, good God, where do I even begin with this one? You see, I'm not a fan of contemporary horror tropes. You're not going to see me jumping out of my chair to go catch the latest gore fest in theaters. No, I'm a much bigger fan of subtlety. I like psychological things, thrillers, and stuff like that. I would rather have something mess with my head. And in the case of my number one, sometimes my heart. Stories Untold. Developed by No Code and published by Devolver Digital, Stories Untold is, funnily enough, a story-based thriller, adventure, puzzle game, and heart-wrenching simulator. The game is presented in the style of an old sci-fi television show, one where each episode would have been a completely different adventure. It borrows heavily from an 80s aesthetic, everything from many of the visuals, the music and the sound, the technology you see and have to interact with, and the super cool and trippy title sequence you get every time you start up a new episode. And that's right, as you can probably see on this main title screen, Stories Untold is split into 4 individual episodes. And some of you have already checked out thinking, oh, episodes? Is this gonna be like Alone in the Dark? Because that's dumb and stupid and boring and stupid and dumb and stupid. Shut the hell up, North. Hell no, this isn't that way at all. It shows that it is split up into 4 episodes, but don't let that deter you, because each of these may as well have been released as their own game. Mechanics are drastically different from one another. The storyline seems like there isn't any sort of connection from one episode to the next, but as it goes on, and as you play, connections start to very quietly bubble to the surface. Episode 1 starts as a text parser adventure game. It seems simple and innocent enough, but as soon as you are completely, deeply invested in it, it turns on its head and really starts to dick with your mind. Then Episode 2 is in a laboratory somewhere, where you're helping enact an experiment of some kind. Episode 3 puts you in control of a communication station in the north, in the midst of what you can gather is one of the craziest snowstorms the world has ever seen, trying to calibrate relay machinery before the world essentially ends. While completely different in structure, as they go on, you start finding minuscule connections from one to the other. Small, yes, but just big enough to make you stop and rethink everything. They all follow their own little miniature story. They could all stand alone on their own, just fine. But then Episode 4 starts. Oh, God help me. Look, I said this was going to be spoiler-free, and I meant it. Saying anything further about this game could be really risky. As often as this word gets thrown around so frivolously, I feel wholeheartedly justified in saying that Stories Untold is an experience. It's something that you have to play for yourself at least once to get the full effect. Does it have multiple endings? No. Does it have super action-packed gameplay? Not really. But it does have something that a lot of other horror games and a lot of games in general do not. This shit made me feel. I am absolutely serious. Yeah, the other games on this list, they'll make you feel scared, tense, confused, absolutely uncomfortable. Stories Untold makes you feel that and then some. Stories Untold makes you feel guilt. Take notes, Cage, you fucking amateur. Again, staying away from all spoilers, Stories Untold is a brilliant example of psychological thrillers in gaming. It gets inside your head in so many ways, and it messes with you, puts upon you this overwhelming sense of uncertainty, instability, and this insurmountable sense of culpability throughout. It feels like you're always one errant twitch away from a complete and irreversible breakdown. The words on the screen, words spoken aloud, they sometimes give this air of indignation, judgment, and disappointment. It feels so personal. And when we finally figure out why, it's just... oh my god, I hate avoiding spoilers! And not even as a joke, this game actually made my chest physically hurt. That phone number in Simulacra, that was one thing, but this? The realizations you have, the discoveries you make, they will send your heart sinking to your feet. Sure, this game doesn't have a boatload of replay value, but that's the thing. I've not played this game that much, but I remember every single moment. This game is a surrealist work of art. It's not only engaging and tense, but it's also made me feel more emotions than anything that those fucking blockheads over at Quantic Dream ever will. Except for Chloe. She's perfect. Shut up. And there you have it. Those are some of my personal favorite games to celebrate the Halloween season. Honestly, I probably could have gone on a lot longer for most of them. Especially Stories Untold. I've been debating giving that game the 2-bit treatment. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. And yeah, it's late into the month of October, but when October 31st is one of your favorite days of the year, the days leading up to it never seem short enough. So, here's something you can do to make those days go by a little more quickly. Check the links that I've provided in the description below. I've even made the links spoiler-free for those of you that haven't watched the video yet. But if you've already watched the video this far, so it doesn't... Right, just appreciate my preemptive genius, okay? Those are all direct links to the games I put on this list. And fun fact, I actually didn't realize until long after I finished writing this script that that Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, 3, and 4 are actually sold as a bundle now. I swear to God, I picked those games long before I put them on this list. Click those links. Pick up all the games I put on this list. Get some friends over, get some snacks, maybe some booze. If you're of age, of course, don't be a fucking moron. Sit around and play these games in the order that I provided. I'm serious. Look, worst case scenario, you like some of them better than others. And best case scenario, you get to sit around with friends and play a bunch of video games. Buying video games nowadays can be kind of a gamble, and price is never really indicative of quality. As an example, right now you can get Horizon Zero Dawn, or a Game of the Year edition copy of Dragon Age Inquisition for under $30. But you'll still have to pay around full price if you want Mighty Numnut 9, No Man's fucking Sky, or Super Mario Maker. A 3-year-old game with little to no starting content for a console that isn't even being manufactured anymore. I would understand that price if it was a port to the Switch, but get your shit together, Nintendo! Fuck!
And you kiss your mother with that mouth?
Sorry. Meanwhile, you can get every single game on this list, 8 video games, for the price of one Super Ultra Mega Special Edition Assassin's Creed annualized cash grab. I'm not exactly an economics major, but that seems a little more cost effective if you ask me. Get these games and give them a shot. Or don't. I can't exactly tell you how to live. Those are just my 2 bits. Happy Halloween.